and welcome to the Journey Through the Generations podcast. I'm Trisha. Thank you for listening today. Today I'm going to continue our discussion with my mom. Hey, Mom.
Hey, Trisha.
We recently went on a genealogy road trip to Little Rock, and in part one, we talked about what we did at the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies and the James Morgan collection that we viewed at the Butler Center. After we left the Butler Center on Saturday, early evening, it was a little before 5, I'd say, we went over to my mom's sister, my Aunt Nenny's. And of course, we had to tell her about the James Morgan collection that we had just gone to. She's older than you.
She's 80. She's 15 years older than I am.
So she was born in Newport. She did move after she graduated from high school.
Yes.
She got married, had kids, and then she came back some years later.
Moved back to Newport in the 80s.
Right. So she knew Mr. Morgan.
Oh, yes. She knew him well. She worked on some of the committees with him as well.
Right. So she obviously had a relationship and knew Mr. Morgan. So, of course, we wanted to let her know all about what we had done at the Butler Center looking at this collection, because part of his collection is about genealogy, where he helped people do their family trees and trace their roots and things like that. And there is a hatchet folder
right
in the James Morgan collection, which is my mother's paternal side of her family. So we wanted to let Aunt Nene know that this collection exists, that it's right down the street. It's like 15 minutes from her house. It took us about 15 minutes to get to her house after we left the Butler Center. So what do you remember about what Aunt Nene reacted to our trip to the Butler Center?
Well, her reaction was she was just as excited as we are. And it's just because, we gave her the information about there being documents there that, would take her back, as well with people that she knows. And she was so excited that she actually wants to accompany Trisha the next time she goes to Little Rock to the Butler Center when she knows that that's what she's going for, because sometimes she may take a trip to Little Rock without knowing, something may come up and she has to go to Little Rock. But she always can squeeze in a trip to the Butler Center.
Somehow, some way.
But if we know that that's what she's going for, because she does plan those trips as well, then the plan right now is to pick up Aunt Nene and take her to the Butler Center so that she can start going to the Butler Center just for a visit on her own.
And while we were there, Aunt Nene has a family history folder.
She does.
That we look through that has information. It had some death certificates in it from hatchets and things like that. And you two talked about your father, memories of your father. And she talked about memories of you all's grandfather, Eva Hatchett. Also, her daughter, Tammy, was there with her children. So we were able to visit with them as well. So this kind of just tied into what we, had just done at the Butler Center, looking at, records and pictures and obituaries. And then we were able to actually go to your sisters and reminisce further about you all's youth, your father, things like that.
Yes. And there were a couple of documents that you had picked up at the Butler Center that Nene wanted a copy of.
Yeah, it was an obituary. I don't remember. It was a Hatchet.
A funeral program from someone in the Hatchet family. And because you carry your equipment with you at all times in your little green backpack, you were able to just scan that.
Yeah, I scanned the copy that I made at the Butler Center into my computer, and then I just gave her the copy that I had made. And that's another thing about going with you to the Butler Center. That whoever, I don't remember who the funeral program was for, but you're the one who found it and knew that it was somebody that we were related to that I needed.
It was a Denson program. It was a Denson program, a Denson funeral program. I don't remember.
That was one, but we did get a Hatchet one. This one was a Hatchet one. I don't remember who it is, but it's somebody who married. It was a lady, and she got married, and so her married name obviously is not Hatchet, so I wouldn't have put it together. But you knew who she was, and you were like, "Oh, you need this. This is such and such's daughter, and she's a Hatchet." And you explained it, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So that's another benefit of taking someone else with you. Looking at records and things, especially somebody who knows more about the family and the names and things like that. So yeah, we were at Nini's for a couple of hours, maybe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And again, just reminiscing on, the past, linked in with what we had seen at the Butler Center in the Morgan collection.
And just explaining that to her, just trying to tell her what we had seen, just, made it seem so real, and to her enough that she does want to go, and her daughter as well, just because those are just some documents and records that they would just like to see for themselves,
right? And
just to know that they're part of a collection is what makes it so special.
Right, I agree. So we left there and we went over to my brother's, and then I ate and left. I know I was very rude. I had been up since, what time did we leave that morning? Like 8 or 9?
Going to
Little Rock.
Going to Little Rock?
We left Bentonville like at 8, maybe.
About 8, yes.
So I had been up since at least 6:30. I had, driven the 3.5 hours to, Little Rock. I had spent 4 hours in the Butler Center. I spent 2 hours at my Aunt Nini's, and by this time it was getting dark. I was hungry. My brother barbecued. I ate, and I had to lay it down. They, on the other hand, stayed up until
about 11,
talking
11:30, still talking about what I had seen and what Trisha had seen in the James Logan Morgan collection at the Butler Center.
This is going to be the theme of this also, the James Morgan collection. It's throughout the whole weekend. We continue to talk about it. But yes, I went to bed and they stayed up. And what did you got? Because it was you, Russell, his wife, Erica,
her mother,
Erica's mom, Miss Hazel, who's from Tuckerman,
which is right also in Jackson County.
Right. Did she know Mr. Morgan, Miss Hazel?
She also knows Mr. Morgan. She didn't know him as well as we know him because he was almost a part of our family. But and I guess it's because she's from Tuckerman. But she did know.
So she's familiar with him.
She's familiar.
Okay. So what all did you tell them about the collection?
While I was there, I saw funeral programs for Miss Hazel's mother, one of her brothers, a couple of her nephews, and Miss Hazel's husband.
Oh, okay.
So, which is Erica, my daughter-in-law's father, and her grandmother, and several of her uncles. So, they were just surprised to know
that he kept all this.
That he kept that. Actually, they were surprised that, to know that he even had that and that it would be a part of his collection. So naturally, I tried to encourage them to go to the Butler Center. Just go and see it, and it's going to make you want to see what else is a part of the collection.
Yeah. So then the next day, which would be Sunday, we left Little Rock and we went to Newport. And the goal going to Newport was that I wanted to go to cemeteries to take pictures of headstones of the ones that I hadn't gotten pictures of thus far. So my list was I wanted to go to Schaffner Cemetery, and I wanted to go to Gum Grove. No.
Mount Zion Cemetery is in Schaffner.
Yeah.
And then
the one in Diaz.
is Shiloh.
Yes, those two on the list. Although we found where your grandfather Oscar was, I didn't feel comfortable driving to Howell. So we decided that that would be another trip. Like when we had a male person with us to be with us, because I don't know what Howell looks like now. Because originally we thought he was in Patterson, but then we found this document at the Butler Center in the James Morgan collection that said that he was in Howell. So we scratched the Woodruff County cemeteries off the list, and we just focused on the Jackson County cemeteries. Now, here's a little background information about me. I don't like cemeteries. I don't like going to cemeteries. I don't like walking around cemeteries. I just don't. So I never go by myself. I've never been to a cemetery by myself. That will never happen. But this was the first time that I had been to a cemetery without a man with me. And more background information, both my mother and I are very directionally challenged. We get lost pretty much everywhere we go, every time we go somewhere together. Yes, I use a GPS, and yes, I still get lost. So this part of the road trip was a little bit of an adventure. Even though I'm familiar with Jackson County, that's where I grew up, that's where she grew up. But you know, that whole direction thing. So we get there, we get to Jackson County, and we get off on the exit, of which my mother said was the right exit. Looking for Mount Zion Schaffner Cemetery. Would you like to say what happened next?
Well, we got off on the wrong exit. And yes, it was the exit that I said we needed to get off on. It's been a while since I have been to Jackson County. And if I go in from a different way, it's kind of hard. So I usually have to go in from the way that I know, which is not what we were doing. However, because it was in a wooded area, I did advise her that maybe we needed to turn around and go back. So we did, and when we got to Schaffner, we did find the correct road, and we almost made it to the cemetery, but it was farther back in the woods than I remembered, because I was thinking it was right behind the church, which it wasn't.
I'm not going to say I've never been there. I'm sure I probably have been to the church when it was there. Of course, I don't remember. And I probably was reading a book, not paying attention if I did go there. So I had no idea where this place was. I was following the direction my mother was given. So we drove around for 30, 45 minutes.
Yes.
Looking for the cemetery, and we did not find it. So we decided that it would be a good idea to maybe get some help. So we went to a good friend of ours, Kathy's, and she was gracious enough to then take us to the cemeteries.
Right. Kathy has worked for a funeral home for several years, so she knows where all of the cemeteries are. She doesn't have to stop and ask anybody. Mm-hmm. She knows exactly where they are, and she drove us right to the Mount Zion Cemetery, which we were on the right road, but because we were going so far back into the woods, I said, let's turn around. But Kathy knew, so she took us on further into the woods, and we did find it.
Yeah, we got to the cemetery, and I was looking for your
grandmother, Maddie Hatchett.
Right, which her death certificate is how I found out this information, that she was buried in the Schaffner Cemetery.
Which I had no idea that she was buried in.
According to her death certificate, she is. But she must not have a headstone, because we did not find it. And I assure you that Miss Kathy walked us and drove us around that cemetery looking for it. And if it was there, we would have found it. So she must not have a headstone, because we were out there for 30 minutes.
At least 30 minutes.
Looking for it. But we weren't able to find it. So my next stop in this situation is to actually contact one of the funeral homes and get like a list of who's buried out there.
They should have that.
I'm gonna do that, and it should tell me who and where. So
Right.
I should be able to actually go to, even if it's not marked, I should still be able to find it and know that this is where she
Well,
is.
I think we'll be able to find Maddie because since that road trip, I spoke to Aunt Ninny again, and she was able to tell me that when you drive up into the cemetery, you just go straight, and she's at the very end of that. So
Okay.
she does not have a grave marker.
Okay.
So we will just be going, on whatever the funeral home shows exactly where.
Right.
So,
because their list has
but
who
we
and
have
where.
a pretty good idea now of where she is.
So we were able to do that, and then the next cemetery that we went to, that Kathy was so gracious enough to take us, because she took us to multiple cemeteries, was
Oddfellow. It's in Auburn, the
Okay.
Oddfellow Cemetery in Auburn.
And that's where your parents are buried, and my father's parents are buried.
Right.
So I have both sets of family at this particular cemetery. And again, there are other hatchets out there as well that I was able to see.
Several.
So again, Miss Kathy was able to take us right up to the cemetery and walk us all around and show us everybody that was out there, and people that I had even forgotten was out there is out there. So we left there and went to
Shiloh Cemetery in Diaz.
Correct. And on the list there was
Jimmy Lee Hatchett, my
who
brother.
is your brother,
Right.
and
Gus Hatchett Jr.
who was your brother.
Right. But we got there and I'm just walking around and I saw my uncle's marker, which I didn't realize he was buried in Shiloh because most Hatchets are buried in Auburn. So that was a surprise to me, and I was just glad to see that it was actually marked, where we could see it and get the information.
Because it wasn't a headstone; it was like
it wasn't. It was what they used to use a long time ago. What they used before you put the marker there, so you know where.
So you know where it is.
Marker.
But it had his name on it.
It was engraved, and because they used to be paper,
right?
And now it's metal.
Yeah, like a metal card,
right,
or rectangle on a pole.
On a pole,
and it had
his
name.
Metal pole, and it had his name and the day he died,
right.
The day he was born and the day he died. So I was glad to see that, because I had no idea that that's where he was buried.
And I would say that again, I don't do cemeteries, but the cemeteries looked really good. They were well kept.
They were so well kept that I actually posted a thank you to the men and women of Jackson County for keeping them up because
you posted that on
Facebook.
Okay.
Because for people who don't live in the area, it's hard to keep it up or get someone to keep it up. So now I understand there are a group of men and women in Jackson County. They just, take time out of their days and just go out there and just clean up everybody. It's not just their family.
Right.
They clean up everybody. So
because again, it was well kept. The grass was mowed. It looked like they had weed eated around the actual headstones. It wasn't because I had been to a cemetery where I actually had to clean off a cemetery.
Right.
I had to clean it off because it was just mud and caked on it. And so I didn't, and this was in the city. This was in Chicago where I had to clean off this headstone. So in the back of my mind, I'm like,
Yeah, I was a little hesitant too because you can't see these cemeteries
until you get right up on them.
Until you turn the corner and then there they are. And so sometimes, yes, I have been there too when it has been overgrown. But it was, I was just amazed. It was so cleaned up and so well kept. And
right, because before we left, you were like, well, did you bring your boots? Did you pack your boots? And I was like, my boots? We're going to the cemetery. You need your boots. And I said, well, no, but I guess that's probably a good idea. Because then I started thinking about me having to clean off this headstone in Chicago. And I said, well, maybe I do need some boots. But I actually didn't wear any. I wore my tennis shoes. And
But we carried an extra pair.
we had them if we needed them. You actually wore them because you had on sandals that day. But I was fine in my tennis shoes. Because again, they had mold. I don't know how recently, but it looked really good. And I wasn't expecting it to be so clean and the maintenance to be so
It was
spot
very,
on.
yeah,
It was really good. I was very impressed. And all three of them were. It wasn't like it was just one.
Right. Now, Shiloh and Diaz, you can actually see it from the highway, from the road. But the others, you have to, turn that curve to get to them. And so, yes, that was a nice little surprise.
Yeah, I was very, very impressed, and I'm glad you thanked the gentlemen and women of the community. Did anybody respond to your
Yes,
post?
I had several, and some of the responses were actually from people who no longer live in Jackson County. Some of them don't even live in the state of Arkansas anymore, and they responded by saying how appreciative they were. And then a couple of the responses were from a couple of the men who actually go out and do this. So, I just encouraged them and asked them to, let the other members know that, yes, we are all very thankful that they're keeping that up. So.
Well, yes, we are. And I'm thankful to Miss Kathy for taking us around because we would have never found it if it were not for her and her help.
Well, we may not have found them that day, but I do believe if we had gone in from Newport, we would have at least found our fellow. And as I said, Shiloh is on the highway. You can see it from the highway. So
we probably would have, but it was nice having someone
very,
who
very nice.
knew exactly where they were going and knew most of where everybody in the cemetery was.
Right. Because
she's very familiar with all the cemeteries and who's where. So her assistance was wonderful, and we thank her.
Greatly appreciated.
Yes, and we thank her greatly for that. So the next day, the whole reason why we went is because I was off because it was Columbus Day. And the next day we went and visited with Regina.
Right. And you also went to Gum Grove the next day to see the other side, the mazes, and if there were
Gum
any
Grove
dents.
Cemetery.
Gum Grove is in Crossroads.
Yes, and it's the cemetery
It's
out
another
there.
cemetery, yes.
And I went out there with my dad, and we looked for some Densons, who is my dad's mother's side of the family. And we were able to, and again, it was very well kept as well. It wasn't overgrown or anything. You could easily walk through and look at everything. So I did that Monday morning. And then we went to see Regina.
Yes.
Because again, it was Columbus Day, and I was off. And she's off because she works at a bank, and I work for the government. So we were off. And who is Regina?
Regina is a friend of our family. Her mom and my mom were friends, and I'm older than Regina and her brothers, but we were always friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Regina's son was one of your good friends,
Justin Brown. Mm-hmm.
So she's someone in the community that I have known forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to Regina's, and she gave us lunch.
Yes, and it was delicious. And she showed us a picture, an Eastern Star picture from, I don't know when, the
late 50s, early 60s.
With my granny in it.
Yes.
Because she was in the Eastern Star along with your mother, who was not in the photograph. We determined that they were my dear, your mother, and Regina's mom, who was in the Eastern Star, Miss Ruth, were probably out, setting up the food for everybody because those were the food people.
Yes. And again, that was a photograph that we knew everybody in the photograph, or I did, except there were probably 3 or 4 people in there from Pocahontas. And while I didn't know them the way I knew the other people in the community, I knew who they were, and I knew that they were from Pocahontas because we would always see them when they came to Newport for these meetings and for some other church functions.
Right. So, and again, when we got there, of course, we ate lunch and we, just caught up, the regular things you do when you get together with people. But of course, the James Morgan collection did come up, and we did tell Regina about it and all the things that we had seen in it and all the things that are available in it. Because of course, Regina knew Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
So she, like everybody else that I tell, is like, he had what in there? You saw that in there? So yes, we continued our conversation about the James Morgan collection on Monday as well. So all in all, this was like a really good trip for me. It really re-energized my research. It was nice to actually talk to people who knew my family, knows my family. It was nice to be able to, and I think it was good that we went in and we started with the Butler Center and we were able to see the documents and the records and the, funeral programs and the pictures and everything that we saw there. And then we were able to talk about it with Aunt Nene and Russell and Miss Hazel and Regina and Kathy. And that just brought back memories. It helped reminisce, which is good for me. I can get stories and things of that nature. When people are just sitting around talking, I can, pick out bits and pieces of stories to help put my family history together, like, a little puzzle. So I think it was a really, really good trip.
Well, it was a very good trip for me as well. I enjoyed it, and yes, it brought back memories, and it actually brought back memories that I had forgotten. Some things you see a picture, you remember when that was taken, and then there are other pictures or funeral programs, and you would think, oh wow, I remember her, but I hadn't thought about her or him in a lot of years. Right. So that was it was like a reunion,
right.
Like a community reunion, and which is why I just encourage everybody, from Jackson County or Woodruff County, if you get a chance, go by the Butler Center and look at the James Logan Morgan collection.
Yeah, we had a good time. And again, thank Miss Kathy and Regina for hosting us and helping us. This journey of mine with this research is, helping me to ask for help. That's something that I don't do often. I try to do things on my own by myself. I want to, be able to do things without having to ask for help. But this journey is teaching me that it's okay to ask for help. So I'm slowly but surely doing that. And with that, I'm learning so much more about my family and myself, which, of course takes me on a whole new direction, because I think I'm going this way with my research, and then I can just ask a question to somebody or ask for help going to the cemetery and find something that we didn't know was there that can lead me to a whole new chapter in this journey. So thank you for going with me. I'm sure this is the first of many road trips that we'll do.
I'm sure it
with
is, and
Genealogy.
I hope so.
So I really appreciate you going with me and always listening the last 2 years of me talking about the James Morgan collection. And you never said, can you talk about something else? So I appreciate that. And thank you so much for going with me. And that's really all we have today. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out my blog at journeythroughthegenerationsblog.wordpress.com. On the blog, I talk about where I've been to research some of the documents that I found, how I feel during this experience. So make sure you check that out. Also, if you're on Twitter, follow me at Gen Journey on Twitter. That's at GEN Journey. And also, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and the Bumpers app. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Bye.